Welcome back, Spiralers. I'm Sam, and I'm here with our co-host, Gina.
Hello.
And if you're noticing, we have a new setup. We manifested finally having our two chairs together, more couch vibes.
Couch vibes.
And if you listen to our previous episode, we did tell you that we had manifested this. But guess what? It was an episode we recorded on intentions versus expectations. And after we finished that episode, we had to release our expectations because the video wasn't recorded. Womp womp.
Dun, dun, dun.
So we released that episode because it was still valuable, but
Yes.
you didn't get to see us sitting in our cute little chairs.
No, so we tested you on your expectations. And you were probably like, where's the video? And then you have to deal with focusing on your intentions,
Yeah.
which is to listen to the podcast.
Maybe your disappointment revealed to you that you were attached to seeing us
On
in
the
studio.
couches. Yeah.
But I'm happy that we have the video working now.
Yes.
And hopefully you guys can all see us crystal clear
Yes.
on your YouTube screens. But this was such a fun thing for us to manifest because it wasn't something that we believed would change necessarily the quality or the outcomes of the podcast. I remember it really did just feel like a preference conversation.
Yes.
And when we told our podcast producer we wanted this setup, we
Yeah.
were surprised to find out that he was like,
No
"That's
problem.
No problem. Easily done." And we were
can
like,
do that.
great. So I'm having a lot of fun in this new setup.
Me too.
I'm loving it so much. But we don't have too much time in this episode today. So this episode's going to be a little shorty.
A little micro pod.
A little micro pod, yeah. But we wanted to talk about why we're not planning to scale spiraling higher.
Yes.
And this is going to be such an interesting conversation for entrepreneurs and people alike. You don't have to be an entrepreneur, but for us to kind of share why we've made that conscious decision. Not that we're against that happening as a byproduct of our continued commitment and energy that we're dedicating to this, but we actually started to think a few months ago, kind of, okay, how do we keep growing? How do we keep growing? And that all started off very well-intentioned, very outcomeless, and soon, with the intention to grow, we realized we were adding just a lot more onto our plate. It just
Yeah.
kind of naturally happened where we're hiring this person, we're outsourcing this, and we're having more conversations about business. And I mean, I'm curious to hear from your point of view what you started to kind of feel as we had more of those sort of business conversations.
I mean, I definitely just was considering to myself, you know, that there is, even though this is something that we love doing, that ultimately our highest personal intention for each other was, you know, our relationship is the most important thing to us. And I think for me, as we did start to keep on adding things, and we did it with, like you said, a lot of intention, but I did pause to just, I remember just asking you and just say, I do have this thought sometimes of like, do we need to go like this? And are we actually, you know, I don't know. I guess I
Like,
just
which
wanted-
part of us wants to grow?
Yes.
Yeah.
And what, at what pace are we, like, let's just take a minute to like really zoom out of this and really consider like what we're doing, right? Without blindly just kind of just going to the next thing, because frankly, in most of the world and the environment around us, especially with a podcast, there is a very clear trajectory of like what you quote unquote should do.
Well, with any business, really, in a capitalist overculture, it's like you keep growing, you profit more, you reach more people, and basically it's monstrous growth to the
Yes.
point of poisoning the environment.
Yes. And we've always said from the day one that this is like a project of love and that we do want this to be not that, right?
Yeah.
Where it's just a doubling for the sake of doubling or growing for the sake of growing. And so, yeah, from my perspective, it was just something that started to kind of create this itch internally of, let's just like actually think about this and really, not that we haven't, because we've had many conversations, but we ended up just having such a beautiful coming together moment that day of really just remembering, yes, that is our intention, and let's just really intend to continue to pour our love into this and let the growth be organic instead of any element of us kind of trying to, I don't know,
Instead of us expecting it.
literally instead of us expecting it.
Yeah.
And creating like I want the growth of this, if there is going to be growth of this, the path to create itself instead of us paving the road. you know what I mean, for us to go on to. And I think that's where we've gotten so far. So yeah, I'm really glad that we're obviously doing this inner work, because I think we feel so connected to our original intention, and we keep on being reminded of it, and we keep on coming back home to it, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, like as soon as I feel like I'm getting away from my original intention for creating this podcast, I know I'm not successful anymore. And and I know I've been like poisoned by capitalism. But what sort of started happening for me is that I started to miss you.
Yes,
which was
that was a key thing
Which was
too.
so ironic, because we were having a lot of conversations, but Gina and I actually came up with a, I guess, model for our types of conversations. We're like, hey, type A conversations. Those are just Sam and Gina vibing.
Yeah, 20 time, like nothing's being recorded. We're just together.
Yeah.
Yes.
Type B is us having those conversations with an intention, such as on this podcast, which also loved. Love
Loves.
type A, love
Yes.
type B. And then we started to have an overwhelming number of type C conversations, which were also fine, but they were like logistical. They were about hiring, firing,
Yes.
frameworks.
Yes.
And it was when those conversations started to outweigh the type B and the type A that I was like, I don't know if I'm having like, I'm missing Gina, and I'm spending all this time with her, and I feel like, I don't know, like I felt disconnected a little bit. And so you're right. We had this really beautiful conversation about like, okay, like, not that I don't want to grow the podcast, like this is great, but like, I miss you, and our original intention was which was to enjoy each other's company and allow that to really be exhibited through these conversations. And it was such a confronting moment, and I don't mean that in a negative way, but it really called us inward to get curious about like, why are we trying to grow? And I think that we live in a culture that values growth over non-growth.
Yeah.
But we once both shared a coach that told us that growth is inherently neutral.
Yeah.
Growth is not something that's more valuable than non-growth. And also, everything goes in season. You can't be growing constantly, otherwise you'd be like a weed.
Yes.
Right? And so we thought about how we were unconsciously assuming the path of growth, like any other corporation. And we realized, wait, we don't have to operate that way. And also, we have enough. What is more really gonna give us? And so yeah, we had that conscious conversation around like, okay, like what do we think more gives us, because we're already recording the podcast and having so much fun. We already have incredible clients. We're already hosting these retreats together. Like, what more is there?
Yeah, and we have such an amazing community.
Yeah.
Yes.
And we were like, wait, like, why am I so just unconsciously focused on growth? And you realize it's honestly just because of the environment. Like, if you're on social media, even off social media, when you're in the business world, so to speak, it's all about year over year growth.
Yeah. And I mean, we've talked so much about this in like a lot of our Releasing the Hustle, our episode with Vanessa. And even for you and I, who have been so committed to not subscribing to that overculture. I think we've actually had multiple conversations leading even up to that, where we would catch ourselves being like, we got to do this. And we'd be like, wait, no, we don't. We get to do that organically. Like, even being here, right? We really wanted the couches, but we just were like, it's going to happen when it happens. And so I will say that we've been quite able to bring ourselves back to the intention over and over. But we were basically at a point where we were starting to have the conversations about decisions that I think would have maybe tipped us over into having more of the C-level conversations that you were naming, more than we maybe wanted to.
Yeah.
And I think that, like, I'm so glad you brought that up about missing each other, because I definitely was feeling that too. And, you know, when you think of it from the perspective of like a pie, and the A-level conversations get X amount of the pie, B-level X, and then C-level gets like, not, I don't know why I said X, but B-level gets this amount, C-level gets that amount. Naturally, if we have more of the C-level conversation, there just is going to be less room for the A.
Yeah.
And I think for us, we just realized, once again, it was just like a really big light bulb moment, I think, for both of us, of kind of coming back to the basics.
Yeah, we just
Back to our
remembered
roots.
what was important. And I've been thinking a lot about this personally as an individual too, and obviously that's impacting us as a collective unit. But this whole question of to scale or not to scale, and I think there's this narrative that if you're not scaling, you're not fulfilling your potential.
Yes.
And that goes so deep. Like, I think people feel like if they're happy with what they're creating and it feels like enough, that there's this like niggling sensation that's like, you could be doing more. You're not doing it. You can
Totally.
maximize. And that really is the poison of capitalism. And so I had this conversation with a friend of mine recently where I've decided, and maybe I'm open to this changing too. Like, I'm going to go through seasons in my life.
Yes,
But
yeah.
I was like, I want Spiraling Higher to be like the best boutique shop. Like, you know what I mean? Where it's not a shop that's globally franchised all around the world. It's well known. It's got its community of customers, if you will, and it's owner operated.
Yeah.
And the owners do all of the operations. Everything's done with love and intention. And the people who engage with it know that.
Yes.
It's like, ooh, this is like the best shop in town sort of thing.
Yeah.
And it's not about the whole world engaging with us, because what I love is owner operating my store.
Yes.
And I don't actually want to outsource that to a bunch of other people so that I don't have to do anything. I'm like, no, this is what I love. But it started to become a managerial role for the two of us rather than a more creative role.
Yeah.
And I just realized that's not how I want to spend my days. And I realize how I spend my days is how I spend my life. And so it's not that scaling is a negative thing. I think there's a lot of people who probably do better in those managerial roles and can scale to that degree. But I think we just got really curious about, like, what do we think scaling is going to give us that we don't already have?
Yeah.
And when we realized it was nothing other than our unconscious attachment to growth and how that ties into potential, we realized, oh, we're already doing everything we think growth is going to give us. Like,
Totally.
I guess we'd have a little extra spending money, but like, money can't buy my connection and time with you.
Well, I was just going to say, but then it would be less time together for us to actually just hang out. And so we're not saying, you know, again, like you said, that growth is bad, right? It is neutral and it is a choice. But I think naturally when you do create a business, especially with something that you love, and it does start to feel good, you just kind of inherently want more, and you just want more and more and more. And then because everybody else is like, we want more and more and more, you kind of are like, me too. And you just kind of keep doing those things. And because it is coming from love ultimately, but I think
it can transition into fear.
Absolutely. I don't know that we went into fear. I think it just felt like we could do it, right? Like we could keep growing, we could keep doing this, and because we love doing it, like let's just keep going. But I don't know, it kind of reminds me of my dilemma of having 2 kids or not. Everybody kept saying, like, if we can do it, you can do it. And I'm like, I don't want to have another kid just because I can. Mm-hmm. Like, just because I would survive and make it happen. Like, that's not really what I want to do. And even having a second kid, a lot of people, I mean, at least for me, I felt pressure to just do it because
you can.
Because I can, and that's what everybody else kind of does, and everybody thinks having siblings is better. But I'm like, but what do I think? Mm-hmm. And I think that's what you and I saw, because I mean, we do get a lot of people that, you know, especially in the coaching world or the business world, you know, that think that we could keep on growing this and, you know, multiply everything times 10, you know, really, really quickly. And I think it seems crazy to some people that we're not doing that, because like you said, it's like you're missing out on the potential, but everything has a cost, right? So we might be missing out on the potential of the growth of the business, but we're saving this. And I'm just not willing to pay the price for the sake of growth.
I know. I've had so many people tell me, and I'm sure you have too, like, oh my God, you guys could grow like so much bigger.
Totally.
Like, you guys have such an amazing brand. Like, look at your community. And I'm like, I know, it is amazing. We've built it so organically, and it's been this owner-operated boutique.
Yes.
And in order for us to grow to the scale that other people are expecting or thinking that is possible for us, which, by the way, I already know that it is possible.
Yeah, that's never the question.
That's not the question. It's more like, okay, like, what's the cost? And I think we kind of started unconsciously paying that cost, right? And then we were like, wait, like, I don't know if this is how I want to do this business. Like, wait, did I consciously choose this? And I think that's what's important is whether you choose to scale or not scale, are you actually having your own sense of agency in that decision? Do you feel like people are expecting you to scale?
Yes.
Like, are you feeling like there's a negative result if you don't scale? And vice versa. Are you not scaling because you're afraid of your potential? Those are all going to be unique to your situation. But for us, we're not scaling because we don't think we can.
Yeah.
It's more like, you know what? I'm happy with the growth trajectory we're on, given the energetic sort of constraints that we have and what our highest intentions are. In order to maintain all of these cylinders, I don't know. I don't know if I want to continue to increase the number of level C conversations.
Well, I think it goes back to what we always say, which is that we are the soil that our environment, gets created from, and everything around us. And I think for us, we just realized in order for this podcast to maintain its integrity and its energy and its essence, we have to be in our energy and our integrity and our essence. And that's just not something that's able to be kept when we are going to start outsourcing us to a million other people, right? And so, and again, if that naturally happens, it is what it is. But I think for us, I don't know, I hope that the message that people end up hearing from this episode is that it's okay to change your mind. It's okay to take inventory again of what you want your life to look like. I think, now that I'm 40, I had this conversation with you the other day where I was like, I've made so many changes in my life in terms of my hustling mentality, the adrenaline addiction, but I'm now kind of opening up the analogy I gave is if you wear the same clothes all the time or the same type of clothes. And now I feel like I'm opening up this universal closet to be there's all of these other types of outfits you can wear. And now I'm just in this universal closet trying stuff on to see in this season of my life, what feels most like me. And I think that's where we kind of came back to too, where this podcast has always felt like us, but then it just started to inch towards a phase where it maybe could go into the direction where it didn't feel fully like us as much, or at least honoring our desires, which was I want to be connected with you. And you said, I started to miss you, which is weird because we spend so much time together, but it's because the quality of time we were spending together was a lot of those C-level conversations. So
yeah, it's different having a conversation at work than at home.
100%.
Obviously. And so it just sort of naturally started to tip towards that, like you said, that slice of the pie just started getting a lot bigger. And yeah, for me, when we started to have this conversation, I had to, again, confront that part of me that really thought growth equals me aspiring to my potential. And then I realized I've already captured all my potential in what I'm doing. It doesn't have to be in growth only. And I think that's the slippery slope of potential. And I even think we recorded an episode on that. Yeah, about how you're never there. There's always more. You could hit the 7-figure mark and then it's oh, let's go to 8. People are doing that. And I just realized we have to decide at a certain point what is enough and what is satisfactory to us.
Yes.
And it's not even about reaching the next level. It's what feels, I just said it, what feels satisfying.
Yes.
And I'm not opening up the floor for other people's opinions anymore to determine what gets to be satisfactory for me.
Exactly.
And this is really cute, but I saw this TikTok last night of 2 women having the most adorable interaction on Big Brother UK. I think the girl's name is Lily. Anyways, she's asking this girl, what's a forensic psychologist do? And the woman answers, she's like, I work with people in prison. There's a bunch of different examinations I have to do. And she's like, what do you do? And she was like, I work in Chinese takeout. And she's like, oh, how was that? She's like, I love it. I love it. I get spring rolls. I get salt and pepper beef. I get she literally lists off all the
the benefits,
all the recipes that she gets. And she's like, do you think you'd like any of that? And she's like, I'm a vegetarian. She's like, oh, you would love our vegetarian spring rolls. And it's everyone in the comments was saying wow, someone who genuinely with joy and authenticity loves her life and herself and her job.
Yes.
And it's not a judgment oh, this forensic psychologist is doing something more important than this girl working at this Chinese takeout. It's the energy that you bring to those places. If you can be completely, totally happy and satisfied doing that, that's a fucking win.
Yes.
I'm jealous of this person. I was watching a bunch of other videos of her just being so authentically herself. And that's why the audience loves her so much, because you can tell she's not trying to be something she's not. She's like, this is my job and this is who I am.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, what is my quote unquote Chinese takeout version of spiraling higher of my own coaching business? And I really have taken on that model of being the best mom and pop boutique shop in town. And it does feel a bit odd because there's always going to be, we talked about the fable of the fisherman and the businessman so many times in so many episodes. It feels like I have a looming businessman on my shoulder who's like, we can do import export, we can go global, we can franchise, we can grow. And I'm on the other side, I've got this fisherman who's but I just want to play guitar in the square with my friends.
Right. And this is where the map leads to anyway, so we're already here.
I just want to, this is my guitar in the square.
Yes.
In the square with my friends.
Yes.
And I think to detract from this for the growth and the scaling, it really just was starting to reveal a lot of my unconsciousness, to be honest.
Yes. Yes. And I think I love that you also brought up like the coaching business as well, because same thing, you know, like when I left real estate to pursue coaching, like I definitely went into it without expectation in terms of, I was like, I don't know how long I'm going to do this. I don't know if I'm going to prefer one-on-one groups. I don't know. And it was this very experimental phase. But I could also observe that being in that space with other coaches who are following a certain formula, I was like, I don't think I want to use that recipe. I think I want to make my cookies like my own way, my cake my own way. And it was a little bit uncomfortable at first because you do subscribe to this belief like that's somehow wrong. Or I think some people even perceived it as like I had a limiting belief that like, you know, that we couldn't grow the podcast more, that we couldn't do X, Y, Z. It's like, no, I'm not choosing to not scale because I don't think I can do it. It's actually the reverse. We know we can do it. And that's actually why we just often automatically just keep going to grow because we believe in our potential. But it's again preference and choice. And it was interesting for me to consider like a completely different perspective that maybe I hadn't really considered before. And I don't know, it feels really nice to settle into we just like this pace and it doesn't have to make sense to anybody else and has nothing to do with potential or non-potential. It's just this is the pace I want to take.
Yeah, I mean, I basically realized, and I think you did too, that I don't want to be busier.
Definitely not.
Like, I don't want to be busier, and I don't value busyness anymore. And I think that's the difference between me and the old version of me and you as well in real estate. We really valued busyness at the time. Busyness made us feel successful, productive, and as if we were growing because we were still tying our self-worth to growth. And so, yeah, you had to grow the team. You had to like fucking do tons of deals like every single month. And there was no time for what we truly value, which is rest, connection to others, to self, creativity. And I just realized the more we grow this, it's possible that I start to risk a lot of the time that I have built into my life by consciously extricating myself from these narratives and from these like pitfalls. And so I just noticed ourselves going in that direction. And again, anyone who's listening, it's not that we're trying to cap growth. It's more that we're just open to allowing the growth to be a beautiful byproduct that is organic the way it has been for the past 2 years instead of starting to put like growth measures in place.
Yeah.
Because I think that's what any business coach is going to tell you. They're going to be like, hey, now you need to do this. I've had so many people email me being like, hey, like this is what I charge for doing this kind of marketing. I can do this for your podcast. I can do this for your newsletter marketing, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, I don't need you. I don't want you. Like, it's just more for me to manage. And again, if my desire was to grow and scale and I had something attached to that, maybe I would do those things. But I've just found a lot of joy and presence at this pace. And I'm not interested in like shit disturbing what we've got going on.
Totally. It just reminds me of if you're like growing up and you just really desperately want to be taller. So you're just like doing everything to just get taller and like wear heels to be taller. It's like, or you could just like see how tall you grow. And I think that's where we're at. We're just like watering our plant. We're putting it in sunlight. We're observing how beautiful these buds and these flowers are. And like, I just want to be in our garden and just enjoy it. I'm not about trying to build up like a huge, like, I don't know, 20-acre nursery for it. You know, it's like.
Yeah. I mean, I think honestly, you and I both, and I think this is not a personality trait. It's just being raised in a capitalist culture.
Yeah.
But we're so obsessed with being rich.
Yeah.
Like, especially through media, you're watching shows like Keeping Up with the Kardashians and you're getting an inside eye now into celebrities' lives in a way that we never used to through social media. And I remember reading this book called Do Nothing by Celeste, who
so good.
We might end up having on the podcast. But anyways, that's later.
Yeah.
But it was this entire chapter about how it used to be that you only, quote unquote, compared yourself to people who were in the same socioeconomic class. Like Keeping Up with the Joneses was your fucking neighbor.
Yes, who
lived next door and went to a similar median income job as you.
Yeah.
And then now the Keeping Up with the Joneses is keeping up with millionaires and billionaires. It's like, that's not your lifestyle.
Yeah.
And to be honest, this is not a limiting belief. I think it's a systemic issue. There's not enough quote unquote hard work that you can do to become a billionaire. Like, there are ways, sure.
Yes.
But I think that the illusion is that if you work super, super hard, you can capture that lifestyle.
Yeah.
And I realized that in a lot of ways I was unconsciously chasing that a couple years ago, where I just thought like my life is going to be better when I'm richer. Like I think that's the illusion we all fall victim to.
100%. Of course. I mean, that is constantly what we're fed. And I mean, frankly, you and I both have coached a lot of people coach people through leaving their corporate job to like pursue what they really want to do.
Right.
And then a lot of times what happens, I don't think with our clients, but a lot of people who make that jump end up jumping and then like needing that to be like this huge big thing and needing to scale that. Yeah, to justify that. But I've actually also equally coached people through like going back to a job or like doing both at the same time. And I'm just like seeing so many examples of what people deem to be what they prefer in their life. Like to me, it's literally like a buffet. Like you go to a buffet and like what I put on my plate is different than yours. It's all available to all of us. I could put 14 pieces of steak on my plate. I don't want to eat that much steak. You might, but there's nothing wrong with what you prefer, what I prefer.
Yeah.
And so I'm just really looking at and observing just neutrally and with so much awe, like, oh my gosh, like that's what you consider to be what you want in your life. And oh, cool, that's what you want in your life. And oh, nice, like you actually don't even want to work at all. You want to be a stay-at-home mom. And like that is what fills you. Like that's so cool that you know that about yourself. And so I think for us, we're just really attuning to that of just knowing our preferences and being okay with that, even if it doesn't look like what other people deem to be quote unquote better, because it's not. It's literally just their opinion. And so it's been really cool to coach people through helping them to understand, what do you desire?
Yeah.
Separate from what's quote unquote possible or what your potential is. Like what do you actually want? How do you want to spend your time? What do you want your life to actually feel and look like? Do that.
Yeah, what we ultimately teach our clients is congruence.
Yes.
And we feel misaligned, resistant, stuck, just not good overall if what we're feeling internally, as in our desires and intentions, if they're not matching what we're creating on the outside.
Yes.
And so it could be incongruence for you to scale. It
Yeah.
could be incongruence for you to not. And I think that it's important for you to just discern for yourself, like, what do I feel internally I want to create? And block out the noise, block out the expectations of the overculture, society, maybe even your past self. I feel like it wasn't ever really society for me.
Yeah.
It was always the past me, which you could say was highly influenced by society.
Yeah.
Now I'm becoming a more free agent and thinking for myself.
Yeah.
So the past me, I guess, is society. But that past version of me haunted me so much in my healing, because the past me was like, oh, we would never rest this much. Or like the past me would be like, we would take advantage of this opportunity. And I'm like, dude, you don't know anything. It feel like talking to the 16-year-old version of myself. I'm like, you don't know what I learned between 16 to 31.
Totally.
Like, why would I listen to you?
Yeah.
And that past version of me was fixated on one thing, which was really just getting
better.
Getting
basically.
everything from the outside.
Yeah.
And only now through maturation and healing do I see that this is an inside out game. Like the game of life is literally played inside out. Like that's how you get good at the game. And I had to really extricate myself from all of those narratives and circles and those spaces that just constantly reinforce that you need to do more. And that's why literally the book I'm writing is basically about how there's nothing you need to fix. Like you need to do nothing more than what you're doing.
Yeah.
And
it gets to like fluctuate. I think there was a season in my life. Yes, a lot of it was being hopped up by adrenaline, but I don't know. Like I think it's okay to, again, change your preferences. Like I can totally see a version of us at one point finding it really intention, like giving and fulfilling to maybe grow, and we'll find our definition of that. But I don't know, like I think sometimes there could be an internal fear of, oh, but like if I don't like grow right now, like what if I like never want to grow, or what if this is always how I'm going to feel? But I think again, it's just knowing like what do you desire in this moment, just in this season, in this chapter, in this page, and be okay with that evolving and changing, you know? So
yeah, you're trying to often make a decision for someone who doesn't exist yet.
Literally, yes. And you think that you are making a decision for like the rest of your life, but you can change your mind. Like if in next month this doesn't feel congruent anymore, guess what? That's going to give you the context to find out what is congruent for you. So it's all always going to be okay. But I think the biggest permission step that we wanted to offer today is be okay with, first of all, find out like what is your pace? Like how do you want to approach your life, your business, your relationship, whatever it might be, separate from what the external world thinks and believes. And take those steps towards honoring that. And that's exactly what we did. And it feels like, don't you feel like we've like locked in? Like, I don't know. There was just something that just felt like that feels like that. I don't know, like it clicked in.
Well, it's funny because I feel like there's this reversal now of the narrative where initially there was so much criticism about people in corporate, right? Like there was a huge departure from all of that in 2020. And I think now people are starting to see, oh, like that can actually be valuable if it's aligned with you and you create a lifestyle around it that feels really balanced.
Yes.
And I'm thinking about the couple of friends I have that do genuinely like their corporate jobs. I mean, there are people who don't, but the people that I do know who like it, they're like, I like waking up. I like going to the same office. I like the people I work with. It's really fun. I get off at this time. I have my dinner with my partner. I do my like fun activities on the evenings and the weekends. Like they feel balanced and happy in those jobs.
Yes.
And I feel like there was a lot of entrepreneurial just
glamorization.
Wacko glamorization that was like, dude, you could be making so much more money.
Yeah, you could be so much freer. It's like, no, the job or entrepreneurship does not give you freedom. You do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I feel like in a weird way, I feel like we found the corporate sweet spot in our entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
Because entrepreneurship it's a bit sneaky where it's like it will always try to convince you to do more. And I find that we're in this, like the pace that we have sort of established for now, again, could change in the future. But this feels like, no, I like the amount of hours I'm spending on this. I like what I'm still able to have time for outside of it.
Yeah.
I feel good.
Yeah.
And I don't need to add more hours.
Totally.
I don't need to work overtime.
You and I absolutely could record an episode every single day, 2 times a day, and we would have fun, right? But then the cost of that is we wouldn't have the time and space for like our time, right?
Yeah.
And so again, it's like now we've just found, like you said, that sweet spot of this is how much I want to spend. You're like, that's how much I want to spend. I'm like, great. And now we have all of this other time to do X, Y, Z. It's just, again, we kind of talked about this in the last episode. It's us determining what our external world is going to be instead of the external telling us what to do.
Yeah.
And us just kind of like sheep kind of going along with something, which thankfully we never got to that point. We were just like starting to like entertain that idea. And I think we both felt that lack of congruence.
Yeah.
It was so we could feel that. And then, we had this conscious conversation. And so I hope this inspires you to kind of, not you, the audience. As I said,
wow,
that,
I'm like, so inspired.
I would like you to do this. No, I hope this inspires everybody listening to, take inventory. Because I think at this point, like I said, I'm 40 now, and I've had these moments of having to really think about, like, what do I want? And the kid thing was a big thing for me of like, do I want 2 kids? And I always thought I did until I actually was faced with having a second child. And I was like, I don't think I do. And it was so confusing to me because I just always
Everyone
thought I
tells
did.
you that you should.
And I honestly believe that I did until I really stripped away all of that conditioning to give myself permission to actually feel what I feel. And it became very clear I don't want to have another kid. And then I was able to create the life that I want versus, trying to fit into what I think other people thought I should be. So I guess just always be open to, I don't want to say questioning, but really just like I said, looking a little bit closer into what life you are creating and does it align? Because I think also I actually just talked to somebody who was an entrepreneur for, 5 years, loved it, but now it just doesn't.
Yeah.
And it's like, and I think a lot of people just stay in their business because it's like the history thing, right? I've been in it for so long, so I just want to keep going.
It's
with
like a
it.
bad
It's like,
relationship.
Yes, it's like we've been together for so long. We should just keep staying together. It's like, or you could realize the chapter's done and start a new book, right? And I just think a lot of people stay in a book that they were done writing a long time ago.
Yeah. I love that. A book that they were done writing a long time ago.
Yeah.
That was so dramatic. Great way to sort of close off this episode. And this is an opportunity for you to take inventory and think about, what do I want to create? Like, do I feel... I think a great way of also discerning this for yourself too is, do you feel obligated? That's a very specific energy in my body. And I started to feel that our growth was obligatory. Like, we need to hire an extra person for this. Not like, I want to hire an extra person. And that might actually be within you as a desire that you're unattached to. And it was for us to get the chairs like this, right?
Yes,
like, oh, I want to have the chairs like this. It wasn't like, we need to get the chairs like this.
And we can't record until that happens. Yeah.
Right, exactly. But honestly, I realized my own dream at my current age, which again could change, but to me, having a huge team of people is a fucking nightmare. Like, you know how I am with managing people. Like, thank God the people that do work with us right now, like we have like a 3-person team.
Yeah.
And they like long relationships,
Yes.
right? Like Tiffany, if you're listening to this, I love you. I've been working with her for 2 years. And then Brayden, like these people have been with us for a long time and they know me well. And I don't want to manage like 5-10 other people. It's just not the way I want to run my business. And I realized, okay, like if I don't want to be like a Fortune 500, like what does that mean about me, right? Nothing. It just means that I'm creating congruence and being in alignment with who I am.
Yes. It just means what you prefer and what you don't.
Exactly. I'm like, I want chocolate ice cream, not vanilla. Sorry.
That's totally okay. I actually hate chocolate ice cream, so you can have as much as you want. I'll take my vanilla. And yeah, and I think I want to validate that it is a scary thing to face when you have thought you wanted something for so long. And I mean, honestly, I see this a lot with creative entrepreneurs, especially because that's typically who I love to work with. But a lot of them end up creating a business around what they love to do. Mm-hmm. And then it ends up becoming the thing that they have to do instead of the thing that they love to do. Yeah. And I think it's again because they believe that entrepreneurship is like better than working for somebody else. I don't know, like it is an interesting trajectory to watch people go through for them to find their path of, sure, if you want to turn this into a business, to what degree feels right for you that still allows you to keep the integrity of what you love to do without it making it feel like you said this obligation. So yeah, because we work with so many creatives and like songwriters and artists and different things like that, and it is such a love-based creation, inherently when you tie this monetary value to it, it changes the nature of that. Like if I was only here because you paid me to be, you would not feel as close to me as me just choosing to be here to hang out with you. And so I just want to name that, like for anybody, like I think a lot of our audience is shifting to maybe creating these side hustles or these entrepreneurial journeys. Just really take inventory of, is this actually what you want? And also you can go for it. And if you change your mind, you can always do something else. So nothing is permanent. Yeah. We always have choice. And we just hope that this conversation helps you to see that.
Mm-hmm. That's so beautiful.
All right.
Thank you for having this conversation with me.
Thank you for not having to take payment to hang out with me.
Alrighty, Spiralers, we will see you in the next one. Bye. Thank you so much for listening to this honest conversation. We hope it brought you peace, clarity, and a little bit further along your spiritual journey.
If you loved this episode, it would mean the world to us if you left us a 5-star rating and a review so we can bring you more conscious conversations, spiritual topics, and guests.
And we lovingly invite you to join our free Spiraling Higher community by clicking the link in the show notes to continue this healing dialogue and share with us how this episode impacted you.
Come on in, introduce yourself, and meet your conscious besties in a safe space for healing conversations between us and other like-minded people on their healing journey.
Here's to Spiraling Higher.